Hello, boys and girls. My name is Miss Grubbs. I teach 6th grade ELA at South Pontotoc Middle School. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of review on vocabulary. So if you have your packet, you can get your packet out and follow along with me. If not, you can just look at the screen as we go over and practice some of the strategies and skills that you've learned this year. So the standards that we'll be talking about today are RL 6.4, RI 6.4, and L 6.4. So your RI standards, remember, your informational standards. So that's if you had an informational text, and then your question had to do with vocabulary regarding that text. Your RL standards are your literature standards, and your L standards are your language standards. So all of those have to do with determining the meaning of words and phrases as they're used in a text. So your RL is more your figurative language, your connotative language, and your technical meanings of words within the text. When you get to your RL, which is your literature standards, you're still determining the meaning of words and phrases, but you're doing it more to analyze the impact of that specific word as far as what it has to do with the meaning and tone within the text. So let's look at, in your practice, the very first question. So number one says, read the sentence from paragraph 3. So normally you would have your text that goes along with this question, but you don't have that. But if you did, number one says to read the sentence that comes from paragraph 3. So you would not need to try to answer this question just simply by reading this sentence. You would need to practice going back to paragraph 3. You need to think about the title of the story. What is the whole story talking about when you try to answer questions that have to do with vocabulary? But since we don't have the text, we're going to use context clues, we're going to use prefixes, suffixes, everything that you've been taught through your lower grades and even during 6th grade this year to answer your question. So, but if you did have the text, you definitely would want to go back and reread paragraph 3, although it doesn't tell you that, it just tells you where the sentence is located. But you would want to go back to paragraph 3 and reread that whole paragraph to take into consideration what the whole text is talking about. So the sentence states, streams, stream banks, and the lowlands around them provide important habitat for animals and plants that share the urban-suburban landscape with us. Your actual question wants to know, what does the word habitat mean as it's used in the sentence? So you can see on the screen here that I've already highlighted the word habitat. If you have highlighters at home, magic markers, you could simply circle the word, but you want to identify what are you actually looking for. And in this sentence, we're thinking about the word habitat, and not necessarily its meaning, but how is its meaning being used within the sentence? What does the word habitat mean as it's used in the sentence? So think about its use, think about its meaning, and then we're going to try to answer it. So I would go back and reread this sentence again. Streams, stream banks, and the lowlands around them provide important habitat for animals and plants that share the urban-suburban landscape with us. So when you have answer choices like A is area, B environment, C shelter, D territory, most of the time, if it's on state test especially, and then sometimes on your practice test, you should have one answer that just does not fit. You think, oh, that can't be it. Then you're going to have two answers that's closely related and then one that is the best answer. So when you look at those answer choices, to me, the word that just jumps out at me and says, this is not the correct answer, is the word shelter. Shelter is one thing that you get from your habitat, but if you go back and look at the sentence, it's talking about streams. It's talking about stream banks. It's talking about the lowlands. And around them provide the important habitat. So it's not just a shelter. Shelter is one of the things that you do need in your habitat, along with food and water. So basically everything that you need is in your habitat. So that's the reason why it gave you various examples: streams, the stream banks, the lowlands. But all of these things provide important habitat for animals and plants that share. Doesn't matter if it's in the urban areas or suburban landscape with us, but it's what do they get? What is a habitat? Because it's made up of streams, it's made up of stream banks, the lowlands, and everything around it, basically. So then, as I talked about, there's two answers that are very similar. So to me, those answers would be area and territory. So area is one specific location. The territory is a location. But there again, am I going to be able to get everything I need from just one little area? I may need to go to the streams. I may need to go to the banks. I may need to go over to a different location. So to me, those would not be the correct answers neither. So then I think about the word environment. Environment, if you think about, and I know you've heard the word environment in science classes, then environment is everything around you. So the best answer choice for number one would be B, environment. So when you go to answer questions like number one, and this would come from an informational passage, is where this came from. I'm trying to think about the word habitat and its meaning as it's used within the text. And here it would be that technical meaning. What is the actual meaning of this word as it's used within the text? So they're referring to a habitat, meaning their environment, where they would get everything that they need from that habitat or from that environment. So let's scroll on down. If you have your package, you can look at it. If not, then you can just look on the screen with me. But number two also tells you that this sentence comes from paragraph 5. So there again, they're not going to tell you to go back and reread that particular paragraph, but that is what you would need to do. So if you had the actual text, but since we don't, we're going to use context clues and prefixes and suffixes to try to help us figure out the meaning of this word as it's being used in this sentence. So the sentence states, instead, it hits impervious surfaces like hard pavement and rooftops and has no chance to infiltrate the soil. So your question is asking you, what is the meaning of the word impervious as it's used in the sentence? So I would go back and I would reread that sentence again, but there again, if you have the text, make sure you're reading the title of the story, you're thinking about what is the whole text about, and then the paragraph from which this sentence comes from. So think about it as a whole before you try to pick your or select your answer. But there again, these answer choices are very similar to number one. You have one that you just look at and you think, oh, this has nothing to do with this sentence. Then you have two that are very similar, and then you have one that is your best answer. So let's use the words within the sentence to help us figure out what it means. So even if I didn't know the word impervious, even if I didn't even know how to pronounce the word impervious, I should still be able to figure out what it means. So instead, it hits blank surfaces, some type of surfaces, like hard pavement and rooftop. So within this sentence, they give you examples. They're using a simile. They're comparing these surfaces, what it's hitting, these surfaces to being like hard pavement, rooftops. You've all been driving up and down the road. You've seen the pavement. Your rooftops, they're there for a reason to keep the wind, the rain out of your house. So they're to prevent things from coming in. That hard pavement is a flat surface, so you don't get your vehicle dirty and muddy if it was just a dirt road or a gravel road of some sort. So when you think about the hard pavement, you think about the rooftops, you're trying to keep something from coming in. It says it has no chance to infiltrate the soil. So you think, well, Ms. Grubbs, I don't know what infiltrate means. And no, but you can associate a word with infiltrate. And so when I think about infiltrate, I think about the word filter. Most of you are getting ready to go swimming if you haven't been already, and those filters, you want filters in your pool to keep out the bad things. You want filters on your water faucets to protect the water, your drinking water. So infiltrate would simply mean that it goes into the soil, but this says it has no chance to go into the soil if it's hitting that hard pavement and rooftop. So let's think about these answer choices. What is the meaning of the word impervious as it's used in the sentence? You have the word affected. So remember I told you that there's just one answer choice that doesn't really seem to fit, doesn't make sense. So that would be it. We're not talking about that. Instead, it hits the affected surfaces. Affected means something's happened to it. So we wouldn't want A. Now remember I told you there's two answer choices that are very similar. You have cracked and you have exposed. So if you think about exposed, something that's open, if you had a cut or a scratch, a wound on your arm, if it was exposed, then that means it's open and germs could get in. Same thing with cracked. Think about an egg. It's solid on the outside, and then when you crack it, it's open. But if you think about your hard pavement and rooftops, you wouldn't want them to be open in places. So it says instead it hits impervious surfaces like hard pavement, rooftops. Those things are not cracked open, not exposed, or they shouldn't be the pavement, but sometimes there are places. But those are more like holes. But if you're just thinking about the solid surface, that's what it is. It's solid. So it says instead it hits the impervious surfaces like the hard pavement and the rooftops. It has no chance to infiltrate the soil. So what kind of surfaces is it? So your best answer for number 2 would be resistant. Instead it hits resistant surfaces, these things that can turn something back. If you think about if you were walking along a tile floor or a linoleum floor or something in your sock feet and you went to slide, you're going to slide. But if you was to walk along a carpet floor or a floor that had a carpet on it, you have a little bit more resistance. You're not going to be able to slide. So the same thing here. This surface is resistant, like the hard pavement and rooftops, and it would not have any chance to infiltrate the soil. So as you go on and answer the rest of these questions 3 through 13 in your packet for some vocabulary practice, just think about these strategies. Think about, if you did have the actual text, you would want to go back and think about the whole text. If not, if you're just trying to use it by answering the question by the sentence that they have provided, then analyze the sentence. Look at the words within the sentence. See if there's any similes, any metaphors, that figurative language within the sentence that might help you determine which answer choice is the best. And then look at your answer choices. If you have two that are so closely related, more than likely you're not going to be able to pick either one of them. And then one, of course, would not be correct at all, and then one would be the best answer. So just remember that these are your RI 6.4, RL 6.4, and AL 6.4 standards when you are practicing on the 6th grade vocabulary practice items that's in your packet. Hope you have a good and safe summer, and hope this helps.